They fired me on a Friday, after 17 years, without looking me in the eye. Name's Eliot, 45, systems architect. I left behind my old mug but took every blueprint they forgot to lock. Ever walked out of a windowless room knowing it wouldn't be you who panicked next? What would you have done? They called me into HR at 10:45 a.m. on a Friday. The kind of late morning hour when the office is still half caffeinated, when people are shuffling between their second meeting and their third cup of coffee. I didn't bring anything with me except my phone and a slight headache. The room they chose was internal. No windows, no light, except the harsh, overhead fluorescent kind that makes your skin look like printer paper. A box of tissues sat in the middle of the table, absurdly hopeful. I didn't need them. Jenna Tuck from HR smiled like we were old college friends. "Eliot, thanks for coming in." Her voice had a syrupy softness to it, like she'd practiced it in a mirror that morning. Dylan Haskins, our CTO, was already in the chair next to her, knees bouncing under the table, gaze locked somewhere near the corner of the room. 3 months ago, I'd seen it coming. A code commit pushed to our internal repo, one of mine, but without my name on it. No credit, no mention, just clean removal of my contribution under another engineer's handle. I didn't confront anyone. I printed it out, slid it into a folder, and I kept working. Jenna started reading. After careful consideration, Data Cove Solutions has decided to transition your role as part of a broader restructuring. I nodded as she went through the script. Her words melted into the air like white noise in a dentist's office. Dylan shifted in his chair, cleared his throat twice, but never spoke. That was his style. Let HR be the scalpel while he stood behind the curtain. On the table sat a folder labeled Severance Package, neatly tabbed, probably reviewed by legal at 7:30 this morning. Jenna placed it in front of me. I opened it, glanced over the first page, then signed. She blinked. "You don't want to read through?" "No need," I said. She reached into a drawer and slid a Starbucks gift card across the table. "It's just something small we like to do." I left it there. I stood, placing my 2009 hackathon mug, the one with a chip on the handle and faded blue lettering that read first, "Place 48-hour build," on the edge of the table. Dylan looked at it, then at me, as if he'd just noticed I'd been holding it. "You forgot your mug," Jenna said. "No," I replied. "I didn't." The elevator ride down was empty, 12 floors of soft hum and my own reflection staring back at me from the brushed steel panels. I watched the numbers descend, 9, 8, 7, and I didn't look back. I didn't even feel much, truth be told. A kind of vacuumed calm had settled over me, the kind that only shows up when something inevitable finally happens. Outside, Denver wore its October chill like a jacket someone hadn't zipped up all the way. Leaves skittered across the sidewalk in little orange groups. I pulled my coat tighter around me and kept walking until I hit the corner of 17th and Blake. There, under the shadow of a bakery that hadn't changed its signage since 1993, I took out my second phone. A cheap, no-brand device I kept off-grid. No apps, no name tied to it, just raw functionality. I typed out a text. "Green light. Friday's our go." The message sent, I turned the phone off again. No reply expected. I didn't get mad. I got moving. It's funny, for 17 years, I had given that company more than just code. I'd mentored junior devs, restructured entire back-end systems, even stayed late during the ransomware scare of 2019 when everyone else went home. I'd believed in the mission, even as the mission slowly morphed into something bloated and too polished to feel like it came from people. But people change. Systems mutate. And sometimes, The most useful thing you can do in a sinking boat is to step out quietly and let it finish sinking on its own. As I waited for the light to change, a city bus hissed to a stop beside me. Its windows were fogged from inside. I saw a kid wipe a circle with his palm and press his face to the glass. His eyes met mine. Not long, just long enough. Somewhere in that moment I realized this wasn't a collapse, it was a pivot, and I'd already started. Most people react to being fired. A slammed door, a LinkedIn post 3 minutes too soon, a call to someone they shouldn't have called. Me? By the time HR printed my severance packet, I'd already completed step 7 of my plan. That morning, I came home to silence. The kind of deep, trusted silence that only exists when you've chosen it. My place wasn't big. 1-bedroom condo in Capitol Hill, warm wood floors, desk by the window, faint scent of cedar from a candle I hadn't lit in months. The sunlight filtered through half-closed blinds, hitting the stack of spiral-bound notebooks I kept lined up like soldiers. I brewed coffee, black, no sugar, and walked straight to the cabinet above the fridge. That's where I kept what mattered. 3 portable SSDs, each marked with a blue dot sticker. I always used blue. Black ink bled too easily on paper, and red felt like panic. Blue was honest, intentional. The first SSD held copies of every Git commit I'd ever made, not just at Datacove, but even before that, all downloaded nightly from a private GitLab repo, not out of fear, out of instinct. It started in 2020, back when the world slowed down and Zoom became our new commute. That year, a 23-year-old intern named Miguel Torres forwarded me an internal memo. Not to be malicious, but because he didn't know where else to send it. Subject: Team restructure, back-end optimization. Body: remove non-essential contributors from core dev phase 2. My name was 4th on the list. I didn't tell Miguel I saw it. I didn't even ask him why he forwarded it. I just quietly printed it, time-stamped the hard copy, and filed it behind a divider labeled Legal 2020. That was the day I emailed Sophia Lane. Sophia was the kind of IP attorney who never used emojis and could find a breach in contract faster than most people could spell breach. We met through a friend in San Jose, and I paid her retainer before I even had a case. She didn't ask why. She just said, "Smart," and sent me a welcome packet. By summer 2020, I'd started logging every code contribution outside of work hours. All edits happened on my personal laptop, through a VPN, under a separate Git identity. Every major idea I submitted, from back-end queue optimizations to AI integration trials, had a corresponding entry in what I called the compliance folder, a system of annotated screenshots, journal pages, and paper sketches photographed with that day's newspaper in the frame. Not because I was paranoid, because I was tired of being erased quietly. On page 72 of my 3rd notebook, the blue spiral one, I had a line circled 3 times. Defensive integrity is not aggression. It's just memory with receipts. Somewhere between the fall of 2021 and spring 2022, Carla Liu entered the picture. Carla was new, fresh from Berkeley. Sharp mind, quiet voice, always stayed too long after meetings. When layoffs hit that March, she was on the list. They told her she lacked strategic compatibility, which is HR for, "You're too honest." I stayed after the meeting, shut the door, and said, "You didn't hear this from me, but if you request a project reassignment before close of business today, they legally have to freeze your review for 6 weeks." She did. She stayed. She never forgot. A week after I left Datacove, I met Sophia at a small cafe off Colfax. She liked the place because they made their own vanilla syrup. I liked it because they didn't play music too loud. She opened a manila envelope and slid me the official letter. United States Patent and Trademark Office. bold letters across the top. Filed, October 2021. Granted, October 2023. Assignee, Eliot Ward. "It's yours," she said. "They ignored it. You didn't." The air outside felt sharper after that. I walked with the envelope clutched tight under my coat, my thumb tracing the embossed seal. Not because it was worth millions, not yet, but because it proved I hadn't imagined the work. I hadn't inflated my own worth. I'd just been quiet about it. Back home that evening, I connected one of the SSDs to my laptop and opened the Phase 1 folder. I created a new subfolder, typed the words slowly. Executed, 10:42. Then I took out a fresh journal, blue cover, smooth paper, and labeled the top of page 1. Phase 2 begins. Somewhere between the soft creak of my chair and the distant sound of traffic below, I let myself feel it, just for a second. Not pride, exactly, but the strange stillness that comes when your past finally stops arguing with your present. Because I hadn't lost a job. I'd finished a test. By 9:03 a.m., my phone buzzed once. "Miguel. AI Core is flagging invalid license. DevOps is flipping." I was standing in my kitchen, weighing out 23 grams of Ethiopian roast on a scale I'd owned since graduate school. The kettle hissed behind me, steam curling in the air like morning breath. Pour-over coffee was a ritual for me, not about caffeine, but control. A reminder that precision can exist in a world spiraling outward. Last Friday, right before I left, I'd pulled Miguel aside by the elevators and said, "When I'm out, just watch Slack on Friday." He'd blinked. "Why?" "You'll know." The coffee bloomed as I poured in slow concentric circles. The timer ticked down from 30 seconds. My second phone lit up again. "Miguel. Audit teams in Dylan's office. They pulled logs from AI Core 2.0. Miguel. Compliance says license keys don't match patent data." "Miguel. Did you do this?" I took a sip. 3 years ago, I'd warned them. In a slide deck titled Proprietary AI Modules, IP Risk Mitigation, I'd flagged 4 components that needed license updates if ever repurposed beyond their original scope. No one read the notes. Dylan had waved the concerns off with a joke about how all this IP stuff slows down innovation. And now, here we were. Miguel sent a photo next. Taken from behind the frosted glass wall near the server bay. 2 IT guys were wheeling in a dolly stacked with drives. Someone from legal, Jenna maybe, was pacing with a phone pressed to her temple. Another message came in, this time from an unknown number. "Dylan. We need to talk." I didn't reply. Not yet. At 9:28 a.m., my laptop dinged. The press embargo lifted. Lyra Analytics had scheduled it perfectly. "We are thrilled to welcome Eliot Ward as our new Chief Technology Officer. Eliot brings 17 years of deep technical expertise and a patent portfolio that aligns with Lyra's mission to lead in ethical AI architecture." My inbox lit up like a Christmas tree in a server room. Old colleagues, journalists, recruiters I hadn't spoken to in years. They all had the same undertone. Wait. What just happened? Tech blogs caught wind by 10 a.m. The first headline was poetic in its bluntness. Ex-chief engineer locks down IP ahead of Data Cove IPO. The comments ranged from amused to outraged. Data Cove about to explain to the SEC why their AI doesn't work. Ward played chess while they played Jira. Gotta love a CTO who knows how to ghost then detonate. Miguel sent one more message around 10:15 a.m. "Dylan's trying to call you. He looks like he hasn't slept." I imagined the scene. Dylan in his gray blazer, pacing in a room that still smelled like stale donuts and fear. His voice rising, asking how this could have happened, why no one saw it coming. But I'd written it all. the documentation, the time-stamped logs, even the IP footnotes in the old slide decks that no one ever read, the fine print, and they hadn't even bothered to read it. I had. I'd written every word. That morning, as I finished the last sip of coffee, I opened my journal and wrote the date in blue ink. October 20th, 2023. Then, under it, Phase 2, confirmed. I closed the notebook gently, like shutting a door without slamming it. They thought firing me would be the end. But some things only begin once you're no longer in the building. They came at me with a legal threat. I responded with a time-stamped PDF and a sticky note. It was Monday, my first real Monday at Lyra Analytics. My new office had a view of the Rockies, clear enough to see snow collecting on the ridges. The glass walls were thick, the kind that dulled the city's noise into a soft hum. There was a ficus plant in the corner someone had clearly forgotten to water, a reminder that even beautiful places need care to stay alive. Greg Chen, Lyra's CEO, had popped his head in just after 9. "Welcome aboard," he said, smiling like a man who'd just won a bet he wasn't allowed to talk about. "You good?" "Better than good," I said. "But it's about to get interesting." At 9:13 a.m., an envelope arrived by courier, old school, probably on purpose, on the letterhead, Data Cove Legal Affairs. Subject, cease and desist, alleged misappropriation of proprietary codebase and confidential materials by Mr. Eliot Ward. I let the envelope sit unopened for a full minute, just long enough for Nate Drexler, Lyra's general counsel, to walk in with his tablet and his trademark deadpan. "You read it?" he asked. "Nope," I said. "But I think I know the chorus." We walked together into the legal briefing room, a small windowless space with acoustic panels and a table that smelled faintly of lemon oil and sealed settlements. Nate opened the envelope while I slid my own folder across the table. It was thick, labeled Compliance in black Sharpie. He raised an eyebrow. "That for them or for us?" "Both." Inside were 47 pages of logs, 13 photographs, and 6 handwritten notes, each one time-stamped, each one detailing how, when, and under what conditions my IP had been developed, all on personal devices, all off company hours. On the very top, stuck to page 1 with bright yellow adhesive, was a note written in blue ink. Not stolen. Just ignored. Nate read through the first 5 pages without saying a word. Then he whistled under his breath, not dramatic, just impressed. "You're the guy who brings an umbrella when the app says 5% chance of rain." "More like the guy who reads the cloud patterns," I replied. By 11:07 a.m., Erica Monroe called Nate directly. She wasn't with Data Cove anymore, technically an independent consultant now, but she'd been their legal director in 2022. Nate put her on speaker. "Eliot," she said. Her voice was clipped, cautious. "I warned them. In 2022. Sent a memo about license compliance tied to your modules. They deleted it during the system migration." "I remember," I said. Denise handed me a stack of forms and said, "Just sign this, Eliot. It's standard compliance." I didn't. There was a pause. Then Erica said quietly, "They made me scrub my own inbox." Nate looked at me and mouthed the word, leverage. At 1:43 p.m., Lyra's legal team responded to Data Cove's cease and desist with a single sentence. "We invite your team to review our enclosed documentation before proceeding further." No threats, no rhetoric. Just a quiet brick through a very polished window. By 3:15 p.m., screenshots from my compliance logs began surfacing on Twitter, or X, as they insisted on calling it now. Someone had leaked page 6, the one showing commit timestamps overlaid with server time mismatches. Legal subreddits lit up. One thread read, This is how you document IP when you know the company might ghost you. Guy's a machine. They gave him a Starbucks card, and he gave them a license audit nightmare. Miguel texted at 4:02 p.m. This is getting wild. Are you seeing Reddit? I wasn't. I was reading a message I'd received half an hour earlier. It was from Dylan. Can we talk? Off the record? No greeting. No emojis. Just that line. I stared at the message. I didn't answer. Not yet. Because the truth was, this wasn't about revenge. Not really. I didn't want to destroy Data Cove. I wanted them to walk across the bridge they'd burned, barefoot, and realize who built it in the first place. Outside my window, the clouds had started to gather over the mountains. Another storm coming. And this time I wasn't bringing an umbrella. I was the forecast. On Tuesday, no one at Data Cove spoke out loud. But their keyboards screamed. You could feel it even from across town. The tension, the static in the wires, the desperate clicking of messages sent but not replied to. Silence had a sound. And that morning, it sounded like denial trying to type its way into control. I was sitting on the rooftop cafe of Lyra's new tower. The October breeze up there carried a chill, but the coffee was warm enough. And the view, God, the view, looked like something worth arriving at. Carla Liu was already waiting for me at the table. She stood as I approached, a smile tugging at one corner of her mouth. You always wore black on Tuesdays, she said, like it was a secret only the two of us knew. I liked pretending I had meetings, I replied, sitting down across from her. Sometimes blending in is a form of armor. She unwrapped her sandwich slowly, the way someone does when the food is an excuse, not the point. 3 years ago, she began, you forwarded me an internal memo, said I wasn't on the layoff list, yet, but that I should prepare. I remember. You didn't have to, she said. I was just a junior dev. That memo never should have been circulated, but it was, and someone needed to survive to remember it. Carla looked at me, her eyes glossy from the cold or something more. You protected me from silence. I returned the favor. Her phone buzzed. She flipped it over to show me the screen. A group chat screenshot. Former Data Cove engineers posting their coordinated resignations. One after another. I joined for the product. I stayed for the people. I left when both were gone. We weren't dismissed. We outgrew the lie. To Eliot, wherever he is, you made quiet look like strategy. Miguel had texted earlier, too. Just a single line. They cleared out the break room. Dylan's office door is shut. Greg Chen joined us briefly, espresso in hand, sunglasses he never wore indoors. He nodded to Carla, then turned to me. You're trending, he said. Trending, a word I never thought would follow me in my 40s. But here we were. On Hacker News, a pinned thread dissected my 2021 white paper on ethics in AI observability. On TechCrunch, a headline read, Former Data Cove engineer forces industry to rethink attribution. And on LinkedIn, there were posts. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Some were from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some from people I'd only ever met in code review threads. Some from Carla's generation, devs who never knew the world before cloud-native tools and stand-ups in Slack. But the message was clear. I hadn't vanished. I'd simply built in silence. And now that silence had turned into echo. The podcast came that afternoon. Build, Then Break uploaded a surprise episode titled The Exit Folder, but I hadn't recorded anything. Turns out, Miguel had clipped a voice memo I'd sent him months ago, back when I thought Data Cove might still have some soul left. In it, I'd said, code is language, and like any language, it remembers who speaks it first. If you want to own something, start by respecting the silence it was born in. The words hit harder than I remembered. Not because I was proud, but because they were true. As Carla excused herself to another meeting, she placed a small notepad on the table beside my coffee. "People forget who built the platform they stand on," she said, "but the code remembers." I flipped the pad open. Inside, sketched in blue ink, was an old diagram, my 2019 framework for elastic container routing. She'd kept it, from her intern year. It hit me harder than I'd expected. Legacy, I realized, isn't what you leave behind when you're gone. It's what people carry forward while you're still here. At 4:51 p.m., Greg walked into my office. He didn't knock. He just held out a press draft and let it fall onto my desk. The title read, "Attribution in the Age of Automation, NTIC Keynote by Eliot Ward." "You're not just trending," he said. "You're being asked to speak." I stared at the title. My fingers tapped the side of my mug. My new one, not the 2009 relic I'd left behind. "You in?" he asked. I looked out at the city, its windows flickering like servers thinking quietly. The wind was picking up. Somewhere below, someone had just hit send on another resignation letter. I picked up the draft, folded it once, and slid it into my bag. Let's give them something to remember. They filed a lawsuit. Then they filed a licensing request. Then they filed their resignations. I had to reread the third headline twice. Something about seeing it printed, cold font on a bright background, made it feel more real than all the whispered warnings and forwarded emails that had led to this point. But I wasn't at Data Cove anymore. I was standing backstage at NTIC, a cup of herbal tea in one hand, the other resting loosely against the side of the podium waiting for me. The room beyond the curtain held 400 people, developers, journalists, policy advisors, students with notepads too clean for the questions they carried. The first slide of my keynote had just 3 words. Who owns silence? They told me it was bold. I told them it was overdue. As I stepped onto the stage, the lights didn't blind me like they used to. I spotted Greg near the front, next to Carla and Miguel. Miguel gave me a thumbs up. Carla mouthed, "Don't forget the quote." I didn't plan to. 4 years ago, I began, someone I mentored wrote this on a sticky note and left it on my desk. Some people teach you how to code. Others teach you how to be heard. I let the silence stretch for half a breath before moving on. Attribution isn't about ego, I said. It's about integrity. If we don't document where our ideas come from, we make it easier for power to overwrite voice. And in tech, voice is everything. The room leaned in, not out of spectacle, but the way people do when they recognize a piece of themselves in the speaker. I walked them through systems I once built, stripped of names, titles, egos, just ideas now. Showed diagrams of feedback loops, credit maps, and open-source audit trails. Shared a story of how one commit saved a product roadmap because someone dared to comment. This wasn't mine. This was Carla's. They clapped, not because it was dramatic, but because it was human. By the time I closed with a slide that read, "Build like someone will inherit your silence," the applause was steady. Not wild, not frenzied, just real. A standing ovation not for triumph, but for dignity. Lyra had announced our new attribution framework earlier that day, an open standard for collaborative teams to track authorship across commits, documentation, and even meeting notes. I was listed as an advisor, not a founder. That was intentional. It wasn't about owning what came next. It was about not erasing what came before. Back home that evening, I took off the conference badge and placed it in a drawer next to my old ID from Data Cove. For the first time, the contrast didn't sting. It just settled. One belonged to the person I'd been. The other, to the voice I'd finally learned to trust. My home office had changed since October. The light was warmer, the shelves were finally dusted. and a new plant someone had given me as a keynote gift, a low-maintenance peace lily, sat by the window. I reached into the back of the desk drawer and pulled out something older than all of it. A black, cloth-bound notebook from 2006. The corners were frayed. A pen mark trailed across the front like a scar from a different career. Inside were sketches I didn't remember drawing. Notes written in ink so fine it looked like it might have come from another hand. I flipped to the last used page, then turned one more. A blank sheet stared back, soft and a little yellowed. At the top, in blue ink, I wrote, "Design principles for the next decade." Not a plan, not a manifesto, just a beginning. I don't know how long I sat there, maybe 10 minutes, maybe an hour. It didn't matter. Time doesn't feel linear when you're no longer trying to defend the past. Only when you're trying to write what comes next. Then, my screen blinked. An email from Erica Monroe. Subject line, Phase 2? No body text, no attachments, just the question. I stared at it for a while, fingers hovering over the keyboard. A breeze drifted through the slightly open window, rustling a post-it that had come unstuck. It fell beside the notebook. I didn't read it. I didn't need to. I remembered what it said. I leaned back in my chair. The silence, for once, wasn't a defense. It was a space to build again. Sometimes the loudest moment in life is when no one's speaking, just watching you stand up and start again. When I wrote Design Principles for the Next Decade, I wasn't chasing legacy. I was learning how to let go without losing myself. In the end, it wasn't about the lawsuit or the applause. It was about building with care, documenting with honesty, and giving credit where it was due. We don't need revenge to make peace. We need memory, and a little courage to protect it. If this story reminds you of someone who quietly made a difference, maybe even yourself, I'd love to hear it. Your voice matters more than you think.